More than 5 million people have now fled their homes in Ukraine and left the country in the nearly 2 months since Russian troops started their deadly invasion. Today, Russia is giving an ultimatum. If Ukrainian soldiers lay down their weapons at a steel plant in Mariupol, that port city, they'll be allowed to walk away unharmed, Russia says. The plant in the besieged port near the Russian border is the last holdout for the Ukrainian forces in Mariupol. ABC News national correspondent Marcus Moore joins us now from outside the capital city of Kyiv. Marcus, great to see you. And before we get to what's happening in Mariupol, I want to ask about where you are there. I guess you're north of Kyiv. Well, you tell me. And what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Well, Terry, we were just northwest, about 90 minutes northwest of Kyiv. We have since returned to the capital, but today we saw some of the devastation in the town of Boroyanka, which is a place of about 13,000 people before the war, and it is a city today, Terry, that is in absolute ruins. We saw apartment buildings that have been destroyed, as well as homes on the ground. And we have also heard heartbreaking stories of loved ones who were lost there. In fact, Terry, there were so many people in the streets there who were killed amidst the fighting as Russians occupied that area. They actually had to bury people in mass graves. Those bodies, several of them today, were exhumed as the investigation into possible war crimes continues, and it was a very emotional day today. Terry.
I'll bet, Marcus, and I'm glad you were there for us. It is, without question, all of a crime scene north of Kyiv, as the Russian troops, having been defeated by the Ukrainian troops, retreated. They left behind them these scenes that you're describing. Let's turn to Mariupol now. And those Russian troops. You know, Ukrainian fighters are being told by the Russian forces that they surrender, they'll leave unharmed. Who would believe the Russians at this point? I mean, what are their options, really?
Well, no one is believing the Russians at this point, Terry. It's certainly not the Ukrainians, and they have said that they will not surrender. That they will fight to the very end there in Mariupol. Now, there were efforts. There had been some talk of a humanitarian corridor being opened, but the late word we have tonight is that that corridor, the plans, were unsuccessful, that the Russians, according to the Ukrainian forces and the government, did not uphold their end of this deal. So whatever evacuations were planned or were hoped for today apparently have not happened. The hope is that tomorrow they will be able to try again to evacuate the 1,000 or so, mostly women and children, who are reportedly have taken shelter in that plant as those Ukrainian fighters, the remaining fighters there in Mariupol, pledged to continue to fight and defend the city there, Terry.
And the Russians are claiming that those civilians are being used as human shields. Have you been able to glean anything as to why those people stayed there? There aren't that many left in Mariupol. There's not much left of Mariupol to begin with. And what do you think Russia's trying to get at with making this kind of claim?
Well, certainly the Russians are trying to make the point that the Ukrainians are know that if the Russians were to attack that plant, that it would be not a good look at all, and would certainly add to the argument the claims and the accusations that Russia has already committed war crimes. And if they were to fire upon this plant, knowing that there are thousands of innocent women and children there, what the results of that would be. So certainly the Ukrainians, for their part, have said that the civilians who are there have not been allowed to leave. So there's been mixed stories, conflicting stories about what's happening there. And Terry, as you know, information is incredibly hard to come by in Mariupol, and it's next to impossible for journalists to get in to be able to see exactly what is happening there. But based on all of the information we have at this point, Mariupol is a focal point in this conflict, and what happens there, the result of the fighting that happens there, could have a huge impact on the overall conflict that we've watched unfold now for the past 55 days.
No question. Really strategic city. And let me ask you, Marcus, you've been there for a while now, just what your impression is being on the ground in the war zone, of Ukrainians, of this fight that they're in, of the status of the war. What do you tell friends and family back home when they say, "What's it like?"
Well, I can tell you, Terry, it is heartbreaking, as you have seen when you get outside of the capital city of Kyiv to some of the suburbs of Irpin, Bucha, and Borodyanka that we saw today. You are confronted with the ugliest results in the aftermath of this war. People's homes and their businesses absolutely destroyed. And there's no mistaking the fact that innocent civilians found themselves in the midst of the crossfire here. The Ukrainians would say targeted by the Russians. And so that is the mood. Certainly there is anger here in Ukraine, but there's also a high degree of hope and optimism that the Ukrainians will win this fight, Terry. But by all accounts, it will not be an easy fight or an easy victory to get.
Yeah, I agree with you, Marcus. That was my impression, too. They think they're going to win. They say, we know the Russians better than you do, and we can do this. And everybody in that country, it seems, is trying to contribute something to that fight. Marcus Moore in Ukraine. Thanks very much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.